Hello and welcome to the Small Talk series brought to you by the Bagri Foundation. Today we'll be hearing about Indian classical music from Jameela Siddiqi and Meeta Pandit. Jameela Siddiqi is a broadcaster, a journalist, a novelist, an Indian classical music critic and a translator, and she's lectured and commented internationally for the BBC as well as translating Indian classical poetry. Her novels include The Feast of the Nine Virgins and The Bombay Gardens. Meeta Pandit is a renowned classical musician from an equally renowned family of singers and artists. She's performed all over the world and won countless awards, as well as holding a doctorate in music. Let's hear from Meeta Pandit and Jameela Siddiqi.
Your kind of gaiki, singing, is quite specialized because, classical singing is specialized anyway, but your training, your family of music, Gharana, Gwalior, has very specific things, very specific pieces. But I met someone, a classical music teacher in Holland, who said to me, all of Khayal was actually not about rag, it was not about music. The whole way Khayal had developed was to give a shape to words, and that words were very important. राग ना इधर है ना उधर है, वो किसी भी राग में आप कर लो, लेकिन वो एक शब्द वो सुनाई देना चाहिए. It must. So he then went out to rule out all those people who sang khayal, but the words couldn't be understood. Now he had a theory. The whole point of khayal was to give words a musical form and not the other way around. Now, I had never heard this. आपको क्या लगता है? ऐसा हो सकता है?
But the rag can be explored even without words.
That was precisely the point he was making, that if you just want to give an exposition of a rag, you can do it with syllables, you can do it with akars, you can do it with open vowel sounds, Words are not there to carry the rag is there to carry the words. This was his view, and in my, I had never heard anything so controversial.
So, it's not to say that when you sing any composition, the words are any less important, is not what I'm wanting to say. But what I'm wanting to say is this, that rag, I see a rag as a soul in its own right. It lives its own soul, and when an artist, any kalakar, is able to tap that soul in his creativity, that's where the beauty is. So words will of course come when you are singing any composition, and I personally, like my audience and to myself, enjoy the words. So if it's something devotional, it dives me deeper into the rag, into devotion.
I got that impression that you're really you're enjoying yourself when you perform, and that you are also taking the trouble to interpret and give us the meaning in English, and not many people do that.
And when if it is a romantic piece, I'm the naika.
So you find as a singer that it's very much a moment of surrender to something
yes,
higher?
to certain lyrics, it's like every time you sing them, it can bring you to the moment of absolute helplessness, of an absolute surrender, That whatever I am is because of you.
So you're the kind of person who sees the grand design in everything.
Yeah, like for example, like yesterday when I was singing Dil Berukhe Yaar Kushna, I almost had that thing in my voice, when I started to describe it, that how much you long for someone, that longing, and the way it is describing, So, Dil Berukhe Yaar Kushna, in Bado Bahar Kushna. So basically, I tend to feed from the lyrics. When I'm singing the lyrics, I do tend to.
Yeah.
And I like to feel them, and I like the audience also to take with that journey. It just happens very naturally for me.
So you know that the Persian bandish or the composition you were singing yesterday, actually, you know, in a broad sense, it is biraha ang. It is biraha, but because it's in the Persian language, I was noticing that its coloring changes somewhat. There is a yearning, there is a longing, but the actual language, you know, because they say depending on which language you're speaking or thinking in the reality can change. Now, I've always seen Hindi, Braj, those languages, the languages of biraha, and to hear it in Persian with the same longing, but it takes on a slightly different esoteric meaning because the sounds are so different. If you can you give me a snatch of that line, how it was composed, the Persian line you sang yesterday? I think it was Rag Yaman.
Yes.
Just give me one line. How important you think it is? Because you know, for the average listener, singing is singing, khayal is khayal.
Yes.
Whether it's from Patiala or whether it's from Jaipur, or the average listener cannot really distinguish between those finer points. So do you think it's important?
What's important is good music.
Exactly. But you know, the Gharanas all have their own compositions, their own traditions, their own conventions.
But it's all about nice music. I see it like that. I really see it like that. So, what's most important is, for me as a performer, I think my whole focus is that I should enjoy. That's the first thing, because I
You
believe,
certainly seem to be doing that.
because when I enjoy, I know this will flow. This is ought to flow. There's no way it will not flow. That's number one. And anybody and everybody who comes there, whether they are connoisseurs of music or whether they're first timers, they should go back with an unforgettable evening of music.
Give me an insight. What was your life like training for this?
Well, as you know, I come from this family which is considered to be the Ganges, the Pandit family of Gwalior, cradled in my grandfather Pandit Krishnarao Shankar Pandit ji's, you know, being cradled and hearing that music from him, from my father Pandit Laxman Krishnarao Pandit, his disciples, hearing their riyaz, hearing their talk over the dining table, or you know, over walks together.
You were singing probably before you could talk.
I was singing. I don't know. I don't even know what was the first thing that I learned. I was so much into it that when this whole process started, I don't remember that. My mother started teaching me small compositions, and of course I would come home with these nursery rhymes, which I spent 1 hour after coming from school just singing that, happily singing child, you know, just singing all that. And then my mom started teaching me. She plays a tabla, so she used to play the tekas for me, you know, and do a lot of singing. Then I have 2 elder brothers, Tushar and Atul. We unfortunately lost Tushar in a road accident, who was a very brilliant,
I'm sorry to hear that.
brilliant singer.
Your brother.
Yeah. And he was considered to be like the CN of the Gharana, you know, because he had such a vision and he was a very beautiful singer, very fantastic singer.
But obviously the boys in the Pandit Gharana were trained, but were you probably the first girl, first generation to be trained, because times have changed?
Yes. So I was, we've always been trained together, the three of us together.
Okay.
और जब से I was born, it was B flat. मेरे scale में सिखाते थे पिताजी.
अच्छा.
हाँ. So the tanpuras used to be tuned in B flat, and the summer holidays, what I remember, Dad's riyaz in the morning, and he would call me, and I would sit with him playing the tambura. The gents tambura is big, and my hands would ache. I was like, "Can I go now? Can I go?"
Because you're doing the same.
Oh God, it's huge tambura, you know. That, and my father always taught us with the dagga in his hand.
Okay, so the left.
ठेका देते थे, हाँ.
Left drum.
हाँ. So the way of all these electronic instruments have come these days. That time there was none. So the training was on the right side, right hand you play the tambura, and the left hand आप डगे से ठेका दे रहे हैं. तो वो भी training हमें मिली है उस चीज़ के करने की, till the electronic instruments came, and then there was no need to do that. So totally self-sufficient. And in the summer holidays, besides that, wherever we went for holidaying, there used to be a Japanese technology of an endless cassette, and there 3 minutes you record the tanpura, and then it would keep going as a loop.
Yeah.
And that would be carried all the time in the suitcase. And that riyaz and teaching was a part and parcel of my upbringing. There has been no time when we've been without music. Absolutely no time.
One of the things I found very sad is even people who are singing classical, because that particular classical song, I'll give you an example. It's not classical, it's a folk thing that made its way into classical, a ragmand from Rajasthan. It had been sung there for hundreds of years. Nobody knew the song, and then one fine day a film composer decided to compose it in a film, and suddenly the whole of India is singing Kesariya Balam. Okay, so far so good, no problem. Film always annexes anything that's beautiful. They have a right, that they are a medium like that. Now, Kesariya Balam comes into films sung in a very clean manner by the top female playback singer. Now when you go to the folk singers whose fathers have sung this for hundreds of years, their format is like the film format. And you're saying to them, no, do it in that, wo kacha, rustic folk, jise gaya jata hai, no. They are going to do it in the same pitch and with the same cleanness. They're going to attempt to do it like Hridayanatha Mangeshkar composed it for his sister to sing. So all over now, this is happening with Punjabi folk. This is happening, whatever film takes and makes beautiful, classical and folk people then think they have to follow that format, or they have to clean up. It's devastating, because this is how the repertoire is lost. I'm saying there's no harm in film borrowing from folk, but it should be recognized. But then, because now even wedding songs, and this is happening especially to wedding songs all over India and Pakistan, very well known wedding songs that your aunties and everyone, chachis and mummies would sit and sing at your mehendi, those are not being sung by them anymore. They're being played on CDs, sung by professional singers in studios. So that format is changing as well.
Yeah. So that rustic format goes away, and
right. So then even those to whom that music belongs, like like I'm talking about the Rajasthani folk singers, it's theirs. But what they have imbibed now is the modern version that is more popular, and so they are singing in that format.
No, that's really sad.
It's very sad.
That's
but that's
very
what
sad.
you get if you go as a tourist to Jodhpur, Udaipur, Jaipur, any of those places. There are these government-funded song and dance troupes. All synthetic
and performing to that tune.
Performing a tune
to the popular
performing
version.
To the cleaner version, what I call clean studio version. And you're saying, well, this I can hear at home. And to some extent, I've seen now a kind of very dangerous overlap that never used to be there before. You got classical, pure classical in films, but you got it in particular cases for particular reasons. You had Ustad Amir Khan this, and you had you know, singing in films where classical music was part of the story. That's very different to a modern film where a classical soundtrack is just thrown in. Classical, but with guitar and keypads, and you know, this is blurring boundaries. And the most dangerous thing about this is I hear young people all the time saying to me, oh, you know, auntie, listen to this song, this is my favorite classical song. And I'm like, no, it's not classical, it's based on a classical pandish, but this is a film song. The boundaries are becoming blurred, and I feel that very much over here, especially among younger generations, and these are the generations to whom we are trusting all this, including your repertoire, including, do you feel it's like that in India, where people...
I think there's an increasing pressure on the classical musicians to present themselves in some kind of fusion kind of a setup, whether they like it or they don't. There's nothing wrong in doing it, in wanting to do it, except that where you have to do it because you're in a pressure state, because everyone else is a bandwagon.
But I actually go further than that, because the pressure is bad and it is very much a bandwagon, but it actually damages your real art. Because I have an example of someone who, you know, he was a traditional hereditary musician, family of Qawwals, could not have had better training, could not have had a better start in life, but he spends 80% of his working time recording for films. And when you do that, great, it's great for your bank balance. But when you do that, your actual riyaz is a qawwal. It's because that's a blessing. That comes only as a blessing from your elders. That goes completely, because unlike other North Indian musicians, qawwals have all that same classical training, but when they practice their music, they're actually performing an act of devotion as well. They have a religious duty to perform. So, you know, it's a music that is ibadat in itself. Like for every performer, music is a form of ibadat, but what happens is, if you don't do that genre that you were born into, but instead you're doing songs that people are paying you more for, or those songs are more in demand, eventually that original art diminishes. I've seen it happen to many people. Another group of qawwals decided it was commercially more viable to sing ghazal, and his career was over, I think, in 10 days or similar, because, you know, of course, not because he couldn't sing, but because his original thing, which he did extremely well, he came away from that. And all of these things are blessings. If you're not blessed by your elders, you can't do it. You know, one reason I got drawn to music is I see so much treachery in the world. I see so much deception, lies, greed, all of that. I find truth, if I'm looking for pure truth, I only find it in the musical note. जैसे सारी दुनिया छोड़ के एक सच्चाई जो है वो संगीत है. Because the musical note doesn't lie to you.
It can't lie. It brings you in the present.
It touches on something out there that is absolutely true and right, and in the present, in the moment. It's something physiological which touches your body at the same time, but it tells of a truth, a universal kind of, which is why I believe that people who are not from our tradition don't even understand your song text or what you're singing. They take to our music in a way that they use the word liberation. Most of the people who come to me to learn about music will say, I feel liberated when I hear Indian music. What's liberation? Moksha. And I think, yeah, it's doing something. They haven't understood the words. They don't really, because you get other kind of people, and I think a lot of the younger Indian audiences in this country, when they meet somebody who can theorize about music, the 9 out of 10 are saying to me, so how do you distinguish rag, different rags? How do you know which is which? And I'm saying, why are you fixating on the rag? Listen to what is there. Don't worry about, no, but how would you make the difference? That is not what music is about. Music is not about, oh yes, that is Bihag, and oh yes, and this is that. That is just categorization. That is data. That is information. Music is about you, if you're not playing or performing, you listen, 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 and one time in your life, maybe 25 years later, 30 years later, 40 years later, certain phrases will drop in such a way that you won't even have to think about it. right? Somewhere, something, anything will do a ni re ga, and you'll say, oh, I know that phrase, I know that pakad, I know where, but the trouble with theorizing is people think
yeah, absolutely right. And I think
it's not about which rag, is it?
Yeah, exactly. It's not about any rag.
It is what it is.
Just enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, for somebody studying it, obviously, but the whole point is, I'm trying to say to people, look, they have to choose some kind of melodic structure in which to improvise. And these structures that have been created in very ancient times provide these boundaries with which they can do. The rag is not the ultimate. It is, you have to choose a particular structure in which you're going to improvise and within which you're going to stay. That's all it is. People think the whole fact that a rag is there is music. It's not. It's music first.
It's music first. Rag or no rag. I wake up say at 5 or 6, depending at what time I slept. But after the morning routine, the first thing for me and what I need is my tanpura. Yeah. And the best of the ideas come when I'm singing.
At that time.
Yes. So all the creative ideas will come at that moment, and I keep a pen and paper and I keep doing that, I'll scribble all that, because that is the moment when my mind is so fertile. My God, it's like...
Is this when you're designing compositions or working on existing ones?
No, I may be doing my Kharaj sadhana, I may be just doing a normal everyday riyaz. But what I'm trying to say is the mind is so fertile. It's like that moment,
It's receptive.
The moment you're doing it, it's like you're producing babies.
Yeah, it is your baby. That's the whole point with the associated postnatal depression, the whole lot. It's exactly like that. When a novel leaves my house, when the manuscript is finally gone to the publisher, I feel empty. I feel I have to start another one almost immediately. I'm very glad you brought up this Kharaj. The Kharaj sadhana. Now explain about this to me, because I've known about this a little while, but I want to know exactly how you do it. This is about the pitching the first note of the scale.
Okay,
correctly?
so Kharaj sadhana, basically, you see, when we talk of voice culture, when we teach any student, or how I've been taught, the first thing that is very important is to open your mouth and sing. Because you want the most natural sound to flow, not any sound affected by any deficiencies of the jaw,
Okay.
So it has to be the natural akar. It is that natural akar. And as females, we are not encouraged to do a lot of Kharaj sadhana. Males are, because that's a bass voice. We have a high pitched voice. But I have, from childhood, spent a lot of time going to the bass and going it higher, and then to be able to transverse into 3 octaves.
I heard you do that. You can hold, you can sustain a note for a very long time. Is that why? Because you've done so much of this kind?
No, isn't that all? It's all about the vocal training, right?
Yeah.
It's all got to do with the voice and breath. Breath and voice. So it's these 2 things. आपने breath को control कर लिया, आपको पता चल गया कैसे you are producing that note without no break in it. क्या बात है? मजा ही कुछ और है.
How are you breathing? Through the open mouth? And are you breathing?
So that breathing process happens while you're performing. The audience doesn't even come to know you're breathing.
Because these modern microphones will pick up every
Of course,
sound. So I didn't hear a
absolutely.
single intake of breath when
So
you were
it's all
doing
happening, and it's a very vigorous. बहुत मेहनत लगती है गाने के लिए.
I know, big lung power.
It's big lung power, and it's a lot of calories you'd burn,
But some of those akars where you were transcending all 3 octaves without a break and without...
That's a meend ka kaam, where you're gliding.
Yeah.
Which is again something which comes
Sapatans were very neat as well. But those are particular to your style.
Yes, Sapatans are.
But
really Sapatans, easy that they seem are the most
No,
difficult.
no, of course they are.
Because when
you're
you
going
climb a
very
mountain,
parallel straight.
when you climb a mountain, climbing like this is much easier.
Of course it
and
is.
rather than going straight to the point
Yeah, and straight down
and
again.
straight down.
It's all ups and just like life, all ups and downs. Okay, so gaiki mein ye taan pe taan, ups and downs. Life is ups and downs. It's a good metaphor for life.
Absolutely, it's part of life.